Thank you, PJ. It is time for another edition of the Pair and a Spare podcast. I'm Justin Gaard from The Fan. We've got Ryan Burns from GopherIllustrated.com and Chip Scoggins taking a break from Mr. Project's schedule, carving it out, giving us a couple of minutes of his time because it's project season. I've got a real nice daylight savings light thing going on here while I'm here on YouTube. Well, it's just, I don't know. The sun is just outside of this window here in the Pair and a Spare World studios. And so I'm going into the darkness. I'm coming out of the darkness. I'm going to try to just lay back here, I guess. It's tough being me. It's tough being me here in the room in my house where my stuff gets to go. It's the guest bedroom / office / storage closet for dad's stuff. That's basically where I am right now.
I thought you had an assistant holding one of those light things off in the background like you do on TV, right?
Yeah, well, trust me, my pale Norwegian face, it's tough to light on TV. Oh, good for me, I'm on TV, and they basically use my face for the white balance. You know how they'll hold up the white sheet like this to make sure they get everything balanced.
I noticed
everybody good?
Not
everybody
changing
good?
at all when you hold up that piece of white paper there between you and that.
I look horrific on TV.
How much makeup do you have to put on?
I don't put on anything. I should. The problem is, you don't really have makeup people in local television anymore. This isn't the 60s and 70s. Ron Burgundy ain't walking through that door. So I just sit there and have to deal with however I look and just deal with the slings and arrows that come, because believe me, they come. They come at a rapid clip. Oh, yeah, which is fine. And I'm sorry that, Ahmad Hicks and Pierre Nugent and Ben Johnson and PJ Fleck and Ron Johnson, I'm sorry they look better than me on TV. That's just the way. I can't help that this is how I was born.
Face for radio, baby.
You can actually probably see it back here. Oh, no, it's covered up. Rasmus Gaard, who came over from Norway in like the 1800s, he had a pale complexion, and that's what I'm dealing with right now. So how are you guys?
We all have a face for radio, and myself, and I won't speak for you guys, but I have a body for podcasting.
A body for podcasting. We definitely have a body for podcasting. Speaking of podcasts, Burnsy, thanks so much for helping promote my Danny Collins podcast last week. I really apprecited you not even.
You're welcome for the fodder for the entire story, by the way.
Not even one time, not even one time. I wonder if Burnsy mentioned, hey, good 30 minutes with Danny Collins. Told a couple of interesting stories that even Ryan Burns didn't get to. Showed me his ticket stub from his first game when he was 3 years old at Notre Dame. No, that's okay though. I don't need any promotion on the best Gopher message board in the whole wide world. I don't.
Well, you got all the people over at Gopher football promoting it. I think you did okay over there.
Every little bit helps, but no, I'm sure you were too busy. I'm sure you were too busy in your wife's house to just go. Hey,
we're not even 4 minutes in, and I'm out here catching strays.
It's not a stray. This is a direct shot. This is not a stray. It's like I try to help you. I try to support you, my buddy. Good stuff from Burnsy. Have you on the radio shows, but it's too much for you to just go, hey, Gaardsy did something interesting. Maybe you guys could listen to it and help support those that support us. But no, thank you to. I should pull it up because a couple messages.
This is what I get, Chip, for trying to take like a little bit of a break now that the entire coaching staff is a little bit on a break. So I don't. All right, keep going. You can.
Did you go anywhere at least on your break? Did you go anywhere on your break without your phone, or did you just kind of sit at home?
No, we're trying to. Well, we just started fostering a cat, so we are now an obligation to that until we can get her into some full-time home. So if anybody's looking to have a sweet 3-year-old cat in their life, we can. You can send me a message about that. But no, we're trying to figure out some place to go. I mean, again, I don't have the projects and the depth of the projects that you do. So I'm open to suggestions. I just want to go somewhere warm.
Chip takes more vacations than all of us. Every time we talk to him, he's like, I'm going to Montreal. I'm going to Florida. I'm going to Tennessee. Right. I'm going to Maui. Like, he's Mr. Projects and Mr. Vacation.
I'm going to Italy soon.
Ridiculous.
What?
Is this the Star Tribune money, Glenn Taylor?
This is a 25-year wedding anniversary.
Oh, there we go.
Italy. Do you know a lick of Italian?
No, but I know wine.
Yeah. I know pasta. Yeah.
I know pasta and wine.
I know pasta. I know. Well, so when's that? When do we have to plan around that?
First week of April.
Okay. All right.
And we're trying to line up something with Jax. Just early plug on them that we teased a couple weeks ago. That sometime in April.
Maybe you could bring back some recipes, some pasta recipes for Jack's Cafe.
So my wife, I can't boil water, right? I grill, like that's my contributions.
You do crab legs And sometimes you drop them in the snow.
Sometimes I do face plants in the snow. But I can't cook. So my wife tells me she signs us up when we're in Italy. We're going to go to some castle for a pasta cooking class. And what do you think the odds are I'm going to have an international incident on that? Like, but there were two. Like, you get to drink wine while you're making pasta, but there's two. Like, there's just that, and then there's pasta making where you dance.
No wine.
That's
no
the
dancing.
one I want. So I told her, it's like, we're not doing that one. I said, well, what if I have too much wine and start dancing, and I can just say I thought this was the other one, right? That'd be acceptable.
It would be.
I'm just excited Chip's the hopeless romantic that's doing a little wine and pasta at an Italian castle. Chip, it is very tough to screw up pasta, especially with your wife overseeing you.
Well, my wife's a great cook, but I can't cook anything. Like, I literally can't cook anything.
Except the grill.
That's all right. I can grill and I can microwave. That's about it.
Yeah.
I don't think you have to be the lead singer for the pasta. You just got to play the tambourine, but you have to play the tambourine really well.
That's
all right.
That's right.
And I assume you've already Amazoned the proper auxiliary cord that you need for your phone charger over there, right? The European outlet.
We got the right
adapter.
plug-ins. We got the
but you already have it from your trip over with the Vikings to London, don't you?
Oh, that's right.
Correct. Yeah, but we had one and we got the portable charger. So I'm good. Don't worry about me. Don't.
We'd hate for you to ruin the pasta class for everyone because your phone dipped to 76% or something like that. We'd hate for you to ruin that experience. Anyway, thanks to Foggy Guy on GopherIllustrated.com for helping promote my podcast. Appreciate that. The moderator and one of my good friends. Yeah, thanks to Foggy. I had to look it up. Foggy Guy, appreciate you. Thank you for noticing. There's some of us trying to do some Gopher coverage out here. We just doing what we can. And thanks again to Danny Collins.
The plug for the Mariano Sorry Marin podcast too, or we don't want to give Grim anything?
You do whatever you want. I'm not going to tell you what to do anymore. You can promote and plug and help out whoever you deem fit. That's fine. That's fine. Thought it'd be nice, but it's all good. No big deal. No big deal. We plug Chip's projects. We plug your projects. It's like, your guy, just a little hurt. Slow hurt. You never plug Pair and Spare.
Team had a nice win the other night.
You used to always put Pair and Spare on GopherIllustrated.com. Never. It's like, do you hate clicks? Do you hate downloads on this? Do you hate fewer people?
He hates us.
Do you hate fewer people going to Jack's Cafe?
Is everything okay at the Gaard household? I feel like I'm being projected on right now.
No, this is 100% just for you. Everything else in my life is great. This is no projection at all. Everything's going fine. I just want to make sure I'm watching you. All right, I'm monitoring the message boards. I'd love to see Pair and Spare get some love on there every once in a while because you're a part of it.
I am.
I don't know why you hate Jack's Cafe getting a plug on Gopher Illustrated, but this is where we are. And I know you have time now because everything else is you're fostering a cat. We're happy for you. I know you got a lot of work there, but you can put Pair and Spare podcast today up there. Is that fair?
That is very fair. Yep.
Boy, Burnsy was just in a good mood when we started this thing, and now it's just like he's been beaten down, man.
I'm watching him.
I love you, Ryan. I love you, man.
And I'm going to segue right into Burnsy is the guy to talk to about the new Gopher coaches. Like, if you want to read about who these new Gopher coaches are, go to GopherIllustrated.com and read all of the things that Burnsy has done. Last week, I sent out a text. We want to do a show. And because you guys aren't as committed as me, you both said no. And I said, okay, no big deal. 5 minutes later, Winston De La Badere on his way to Arizona. Nick Rallis just pillaging his old program, the defensive coordinator for the Arizona Cardinals, taking the young up-and-comer, great recruiter, great coach, great buzz, great guy, Winston. Debo going to Arizona, and then Nick McKissick-Luke, the running backs coach, later in the week we find out is on his way to the New York Football Jets. So two guys leaving for the National Football League. Burnsy, we'll start with you. Take it wherever you want to go. Just your reaction to that before we talk about the new guys.
Yeah, it's interesting to actually have a Gopher football staff that is being pillaged by the NFL. Can't remember a time, you guys have a better memory than myself, that in one off season you've already had multiple coaches go to the NFL. Where again, Winston's going to be the defensive line coach for Edina's own Nick Rallis, which it's crazy his rise from graduate assistant at Oregon to 5 years later, essentially, he's now going to be an NFL D-line coach, which, again, it's quite the rise, especially for somebody in their 20s. And then for Nick McKissick-Luke, just a couple of years ago, he was at Northern Illinois. Now he's going to be working with Breeze Hall in the NFL.
Yeah.
I mean, can you guys remember a time in which the NFL held multiple Gopher coaches in such regard?
No, I think I go back to my time on the beat. They had a strength coach that I believe went to the NFL, but I can't remember another position coach
Isn't
going.
Aaron Hill is strength coach for like the Green Bay Packers, former Gopher linebacker?
I think it's the Niners, unless you
Niners
went
now?
unless you
Yeah.
went to the Packers in between that. Yeah, Aaron Hill's there. Mo Lindquist went to the Cowboys for a minute.
Yep.
I thought
Did he have a college
Texas
stop
A&M?
in? Well, yeah, I think it was A&M, and then the Cowboys, and then he was at Michigan,
Yeah.
then he was the head coach at Buffalo. Now he's the DC at Alabama, right? Unless
Yeah.
something has changed, but he was a guy pretty quickly on at PJ's first staff that found his way to the NFL, but not 2 in 1 week like that.
Yeah.
That's pretty big. It's big time stuff for those guys. Good for them. Can't blame that on the assistant salary pool, can you, Burnsy?
I mean, probably not. I think just the quality of life in the NFL is a lot easier with your 12-month calendar, knowing you don't have to go out and recruit. You know who your personnel is going to be. You're not going to be threatened to be losing them at any point. You know when you have a shot at them. You know when you don't. I don't blame anybody for the NFL. Plus, I know there was a third assistant who also interviewed for an NFL job. He didn't end up getting it, but that's where if you want to go to the NFL, that is, again, I think for a lot of these guys is a big goal for them, where
Sure.
we'll spend a lot of time on the assistant salary pool, I'm sure, on this episode quite yet. But for these guys being able to go up to the NFL, especially for a guy like Winston, to me, again, from graduate assistant to just a handful of years ago, he played for PJ Fleck, coached for PJ Fleck, and now is going to be an NFL defensive line coach. I mean, it is a meteoric rise we haven't quite seen here at Minnesota in some time.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, he's going to be coaching guys that are older than him, and that's not unusual, but
Right.
there might be a lot of them that are older than him. Yeah, I mean, I think, coaches are probably no different than players, that they strive to coach at the highest level. And not only is the quality of life probably easier, I'm guessing the paycheck's a little different too. So,
yeah, I don't think they're taking pay cuts to go to the NFL.
No. So, yeah, I mean, it's good for them. Obviously, that's a great opportunity in their career. I don't know much about the running backs coach, to be honest with you, but Winston, that's a loss for the program, because I thought that guy had such a presence about him. When you hear players talk about him and his energy that he brought, I assume he's a hell of a recruiter. Imagine that guy walking into your living room with his energy and presence and just everything about him. So that's a loss. I mean, I'm sure PJ will do a good job of finding guys that he's or he has hired that he's optimistic about, and he's done a good job of backfilling and finding the next wave. But this has been a pretty what's the number total now of assistants this offseason if they lost, Burnsy?
Well, Heatherman.
From the 10 on-field assistants, it's Heatherman to Miami, and then it's Winston and Nick to the NFL. So you lost 3 of them. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so basically a third of your stat, which
is about normal for context around college football in this day.
Yeah, so it's not unusual.
No.
But this is, we talk about continuity with coaching staffs, and I think that's great. But as long as you're hiring and have in mind quality replacements, I don't know that it's a huge deal. But I do think Winston's a loss, because I just think he strikes me as a guy that would have been a pretty good defensive coordinator here in short order at some point.
Well, and he fits the college game so well because of the energy. That's really what surprised me about that. Not that he had NFL aspirations. I always go back to being on a boat on a Gopher road trip with a bunch of the coaches in the summer. Richard Pitino was on that boat, and it's one of the big jobs that just opened up. Might have been Indiana. And
this isn't the same boat that went on Lake Minnetonka with Fred Smoot, was it?
Different boat. Very very different boat. University
Making sure I have to cover my bases with you West Side guys.
And I remember somebody in administration asking Pitino, there were a couple of NBA coaches that had some stops in college, would this person be interested in Indiana? And he said, no. And they're like, really? Indiana? As opposed to XYZ NBA job? He go, why? He goes, because I don't see him wanting to be on a boat in Spicer in the summer. And his point being, there's just stuff you have to do as a college coach that you don't have to do as a professional coach. And recruiting would be one of those. Winston, I'm sure, was a great recruiter. It seemed like he certainly was. And a lot of the graphics and commits, he was front and center, it seemed like. But I was surprised because when I think of him, I think of a college coach just because of how well he connects with the college athlete. And I wonder,
he's so young too.
Yeah, but yeah. I'm interested, when you're that hyped all the time, and I see him every game, right? Like you said, Chip, he's talking to adults now. It's like, and I get a D-line, trenches are they're all kind of the same, but it just, he was such a good fit for college. I'm sure he's a great coach. I just always thought of him as like the perfect college coach because of how well he connected with the players.
Well, I do too. The energy, I mean, it's one thing. I think it'd be a little more unusual if he wasn't going with Nick Rallis, if he was just going to, a team that he didn't know the DC. They just were impressed with him. I mean, a little bit you're going with your friend. But I think coaching that position is a lot about emotion. So if you ever seen assistant coaches, those line coaches are a little more a lot of coaches are demonstrative. But defensive line coaches are definitely that way. And I don't think he'll have any problem commanding that respect with guys that are older than him and having that authority. And I just think he has that kind of presence. But yeah, you talk about no recruiting, no NIL, no transfer portal, none of that stuff that you have to deal with. When you're there, you're just coaching professionals, right?
Yep.
And you're trying to figure out technique and all those things and how you beat the guy across from you. You don't have to deal with all the other stuff that college coaches have to deal with. So I'm sure, a lot of guys would say, hey, sign me up for that NFL job and not have to deal with this stuff that we're dealing with.
Well, it kind of reminds me of when PJ was with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where he was younger than a guy like Vincent Jackson. And it's all that energy going to these professionals who'd certainly have a much different demeanor, especially if we're dealing with like a 33-year-old pass rusher at that stage. And all that energy going with a 33-year-old, I can imagine is a little bit different, and he'll have to adapt his style. But again, if anything, it just tells you what the NFL thought of the way that he was developing. And that's where you had Ja Joyner and Danny Strigow. And again, the Danny Strigow story going to the Senior Bowl is one that maybe Gaardsy doesn't talk about enough, but it's because I don't put it on my website, and that's fine.
Right. Was it on the message board?
Yeah. And that's where, again, to have a young guy like that, which PJ took a chance on, Winston went from Minnesota to playing there to a graduate assistant to then a defensive line coach out at Akron, I believe, or might have been a graduate assistant, to then he took a chance on him in his mid-20s and ended up working out well, was sought after by Big Ten programs and other ones. Now he's going to be in the NFL. Again, I don't know where the trajectory is going to land, but it's tough to argue that his stock is not continuing to point up.
And also, you're connecting yourself to another guy whose stock has been up since the second he left, Nick Rallis. I mean, that guy, is a total stud. Just a total stud. And he was when he was here, right? I mean, he was basically the assistant linebacker coach here when Sauvel was the DC. There's no coincidence that he jumped on with Jay Sauvel a couple of different times. He obviously spent some time with Mike Zimmer, was in Philly. Now he's the DC there. He's got a bright future. And so to jump on with him, he's got a great present right now. He's 29 years old, right? Isn't that what you said, Burnsy?
I think so.
So, yeah, which is crazy. He was a commit. His brother Mike was on the team my first year, your first year, 2011. So that's a pretty quick rise too. And I would imagine he's going to be a head coach here sooner rather than later, at least being put in the mix because of how highly thought of he is. So I would assume Winston can jump in with that as he continues to get his foothold in the National Football League. So good for him. Good for them. It's crazy how many Minnesota NFL angles there are now between players and coaches that we get to talk about every Sunday. It's pretty good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, again, even when Nick McKissick-Luke with the New York Jets, now he gets to go from coaching Darius Taylor to coaching Breece Hall. It's a heck of a gig if you can get it. So, again, don't blame him at all.
So who are the replacements, Burnsy? We can go to gopherillustrated.com and read them. Great website. Love the work that they do there. I try to promote it every time that I can. Who are Chip just put his head back. Who are the replacements? Who are now filling those roles? Fill us in on that.
Yeah, so they figured out the running back coach here in the last 48 hours. That's going to be a guy by the name of Jaden Everett, a running back coach who just took the job at South Alabama. He was there for about 2-3 weeks, and now Minnesota has hired him. So what was your favorite Jaden Everett at South Alabama moment? But he was at Michigan this past season helping Tony Alford coach the running backs. He's someone that had been at Vanderbilt, Tulsa. The hope would be he's going to be a pretty good recruiter. Can hopefully develop Darius Taylor in his last year, potentially last year. Again, we'll see what happens with him. You look at the defensive line, it sounds like they're going to elevate Dennis Carter from rush ends coach to full-time defensive line coach. He was someone that has been with the program for a few years, worked with Joe Rossi back in the day and was hired when Joe Rossi was still here. Now he's going to be the full-time defensive line coach, promoting from within. And they just hired a guy by the name of CJ Robbins last night to fill Dennis Carter's role as the rush ends coach. So a graduate assistant here. Gaardsy and him had quite a few beers back in 2010, 2011 during his graduate assistant days, from what I was told last night. But again, a lot of promoting, a couple promote guys, and Dennis Carter who put in his time. You get a guy like CJ Robbins who had been a graduate assistant here, and then you get an outside hire type with the running back coaching position. So you got three different kind of guys there.
You know, as you're talking about the promotion, this is why, and Kevin O'Connell was talking about this last year. I did kind of a column talking about the new pinnacle of the arms races. All these coaching staff sizes. I mean, they're just huge. You know, they're you look at an NBA bench and there's 14 coaches. There's more coaches than, but. I think O'Connell, or it might have been even Chris Finch that said too. Part of that is you're constantly developing the young guys. So when guys move on, you have a pretty good sense of the next guy you're promoting. So I think, you know, you make fun of the analysts and graduate assistants, not make fun, but just say there's a lot of them and kind of what is their role. Well, this is what it is. Like you're constantly you're training and developing coaches just as much as you know you're doing with your players. So when you do lose guys, you feel comfortable promoting from within. So sounds like PJ's I think PJ probably likes that part. I mean, he doesn't like losing coaches, but I think he likes developing coaches, you know, like he does players. And he must feel comfortable with these guys that he's going to elevate them into, you know, position coaches, full-time position coaches now.
Well, it's a good way to do it too when your assistant salary pool, Burnsy's favorite thing, is not as high as some other schools, a lot of other schools. And even if you listen to the Danny Collins podcast, available wherever you get your favorite podcasts, the Golden Gopher podcast, he kind of talked about that, like just being with Joe Rossi when he, you know, was driving DoorDash during the week of Penn State 2019, right? He's essentially not making.
He said on the podcast the Thursday before the Penn State game. Do you know where we could find that podcast again?
It's wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Some websites have chosen to link directly to it to make it easier for people. You can also check my Twitter handle at Gaardsy. Foggy Guy did a nice job of letting people know where it is, but it's very easy to find it. But you know, while he's doing all that, he's learning. He's basically Joe Rossi's right-hand man and learning everything that goes into it. So when Joe Rossi, you know, when they have a couple of people leave, he jumps right in there, and it does make sense to have as many young guys in the hopper and in the chamber, just learning the way. And especially when they're young and hungry and trying to prove themselves and everything, like you can find a lot of diamonds in the rough, and a lot of staffs have done that. Certainly PJ has done that a lot, in part because he's had to, but in part because he's just found the right people that have the right, whatever it is, drive, hunger, whatever, that we're going to go do this. So that's and it's nice that he rewards them with those opportunities. And for the most part, they've all worked out pretty well, right?
Yeah, his hit rate on internal guys is, I think, a lot higher, or at least seems like it's a lot higher than some of his external hires, which, again, if you got to do Minnesota Moneyball approach because of the limitations you have, you want to have a kind of success story like the Tampa Bay Rays have to do every single year, where they don't have the payroll to compete with the New York Yankees and the Boston Red Sox. You know, I'd love to at least, I think Danny Collins, I'll say this, I think Danny Collins and Greg Harbaugh are going to be the test for this whole Moneyball approach that Minnesota has gone to, or chosen to gone to, because these are two guys that have been with PJ Fleck for a long time. I mean, they are lifers with him. And I believe they're the two lowest paid coordinators at their respective positions. We'll see. I don't know what Northwestern's coordinators make, but if they do succeed here this fall, they're going to be in line for raises, which, again, I've said it before. Both things can be true. Greg Harbaugh is the lowest paid offensive coordinator in the Big Ten, but he is also the highest paid offensive coordinator in the history of Minnesota Gopher football because of Kirk Shiraka and not ended up staying for something. So that's where I'm going to be curious to see, when these two hopefully are in line for raises of market value of some kind. Will Minnesota be willing to go for them? And will, in turn, again, we've seen Corey Heatherman and Joe Rossi and Kirk Shiraka leave for much greener pastures. Again, I think it's going to be a fascinating case study 12 and 24 months from now.
Yeah, the whole thing of they're the highest paid ever in program history, that doesn't really hold much water to me because the world's different. Like everything's more expensive. I mean, you can say, of course, the coordinators now are going to make more than they did.
Costs $9 for eggs right now, Chip.
Yeah.
For the record, I have to state that, or else the people over at the University of Minnesota, who already love when I talk about this, by the way, they love it so much. I'm well aware.
Yeah.
But it's true, but it's also, you need context around it, which is important that you're providing, Chip. Yes.
Yes. And Mark Cole's the highest paid athletic director ever had. PJ Fleck's this. Ben John, you can go down to because salaries are, so it's a totally different world. But yes, if they have good years and they're in demand from the outside, you'd hope that the school would be in a position where they'd step up and I can be honest, I thought Greg Harbaugh had a really good year.
I agree.
I thought he showed a lot of improvement. Yep. I think some of that was, or maybe a big part of that was PJ allowing him to have more autonomy and
hitting on Max Brosmer helps a lot.
Hitting the quarterback, yeah. Mm-hmm. But I thought he had a really nice year, and we'll see if Danny Collins kind of can pick that up and show a lot of what Heatherman showed in his first year. So, but yeah, the it'll be interesting with all these new guys, and that's the, I don't want to get too deep into weeds on these salaries, but when you're promoting from within and young guys, you're not going to start them off with middle of the pack Big Ten money. It's just not. That's not how it works. I mean, in any profession, when you're a young person, you're not coming in making more than. So it's going to be a little skewed this year because I think they have so many new young guys taken into full time salary roles. So this year might not be the best barometer. I'll say.
Well, that's where the curious part for me is, and I'm waiting to hear back on some FOIA requests, is between Heatherman and Winston and Nick McKissick-Luke leaving, that's about $1 million in buyouts.
Here it comes. I was gonna wait for this. Hit it, Burnsy. I was gonna lead right into it. Go ahead.
To Chip's point, there's two things that I'm going to be curious to see once all these requests come back. Is you've been paid $1 million in buyouts, plus to your point, I mean, Mariano Sori-Marin is not going to cost a lot. Dennis Stotton-Carter, C.J. Robbins, Jaden Everett. I don't expect Jaden Everett to make any more than Nick McKissick-Luke did. So, like, if you're saving money both because of salary and because of the buyouts, I'm very curious to see kind of where it goes. Is it going to go back to, like, a potential buyout for a different team that's very close to that facility here coming up? Is it going to go towards like the barn renovation fund? Where is it all? No. It's a very curious thing to kind of think about. I'll say that.
You always like to know they were going to pay this. Now they're not. What are they doing with that money? That's the thread that you like to follow. They might be saving it. I mean, they might just be holding on to it, or they might be putting it. And now football, I think, is kind of its own deal. I don't know if they operate football with other sports in mind necessarily. Like, we were gonna use this money for football. Now we're gonna use it for XYZ sport. I think that money's gonna stay with football.
So they'll invest it in football. My guess is
somewhere, whether it's recruiting, whether it's holding, whether it's waiting to give it to those raises that you're already pining for, even though it's February 11th. Like, and they haven't played Buffalo yet or any game in 2025. I don't think they say, "Oh, we saved $1 million in football. Let's kick it over to somewhere else." I just don't think. I could be wrong. I just think they probably want to keep it earmarked for whatever football wants, whatever
I'd
football
love
needs.
to believe that, and I hope that's true. I'm staring at some of the data, which we can get into with that beautiful Scott Docterman article, which I've certainly linked to on the Gopher Illustrated message boards and not somebody else's podcast. But that's where, when you look at the latest fiscal year of data, the profit margin for Gopher football has never been higher.
Right.
I mean, it's $43 million of profit, which is up $10 million from 2 years ago. Like, football is making more money for the university than it ever has, and a large part of that is the media rights deal. But
Yeah.
if football continues to make that much more money every year, I really don't want to hear it from anyone over there that we don't have money to find an extra 100,000 or 200,000 to keep XYZ guy. But let's what do you think? You're the transition guy. You're the natural. You're the man with the face for radio. You think we should get into that Scott Docterman article, Gaardsy?
I think we should, and because it's Scott Docterman, the guy both of you know, I hold in the highest regard. I'll allow the linking to his article, yet not my podcast. I have no problem. I have no problem doing that. I was just doing some quick math because, as you know, my math is very suspect. So thankfully, I have my calculator. If I do 21 million times 0.75. That's 75%, right? So about $15.75 million is what we think is kind of earmarked for the paying of the players starting, we think, in July 1st. Because you were talking about, Burnsy, the profits, and they've got $40 million. Well, right there, basically 15 of it, that's where that's going. Correct. Like, you can take fiscal year two years ago, or last year, 23 to 24. That's all great. Subtract 15 from that, so let's say 26 now, or 29, whatever it is. That would be the profit. Who knows what the fiscal year is going to look like, this next coming year. But this is going to be a big piece of it. But what stood out to you about that? Those Docterman numbers. We talked a little bit about this last week, right, or 2 weeks ago, with the Gopher money and how much they spent and where it was all going, or actually the Ohio State thing, right, because they were at a big deficit because of buyouts and things like that. What stood out to me was how many schools have no problem just borrowing a bunch of money from their university and spending we're fine at a deficit. Because what was it? Like, a good handful of people have a ton of debt and also take direct money from schools. Rutgers takes a ton from their university. I was surprised Minnesota took some, because my argument had been forever, it is self-sustaining. They don't take any taxpayer money when you talk about buyouts and you talk about facilities and everything that goes into it. My understanding was that they were always pretty well self-sustaining. Now, I don't know what the exact number is, and it doesn't appear like it's a ton of money, but through fees or whatever, they have taken some from the school here, or at least they did in the last fiscal year.
Yeah, they've taken loans from the university before. I can't remember what the last one they needed a big loan and they repay it,
Right.
It's probably for the Athletes Village.
For Athletes Village,
I think
probably
that was,
what it is.
yeah, or maybe even a buyout. I can't remember, but that's they've done that in the past, but it's not something that they want to make a habit of.
Right.
I know Rutgers, they have their debt services astronomical.
Rutgers is such the exception, because Rutgers just does not care that they take tens of millions from taxpayer money, which, hey man, I ain't going to tell you how to, this ain't going to be a government type of podcast here, but it's so interesting to look across the Big Ten. And, like, again, I think the headliner from that article would be that Ohio State had a $38 million deficit because they just spent all the money in the world. Now, it helps when you have 200 plus million in revenue compared to Minnesota, who had 151 revenue. Plus, you knew the next year you were going to have more home games. Again, for this data set that we're using, for the record, it's fiscal year 24, which is essentially the 2023 football season. So that's where Ohio State didn't have as many games. But again, can you imagine the steam that would be coming out of so many people's ears if they heard that Mark Hoyle had a $38 million deficit here?
Well, that's the thing. I mean,
it never happened.
Yeah.
It would just never happen.
Correct.
Which, by the way, I'm not saying is wrong, but it's instructive when this is who you're allegedly competing with, what they're willing to do.
Well, we've all talked to Mark Hoyle about budget, and what's the one thing he says that central administration always tells them? You got to balance your budget. You got to have a balanced budget. And so if you look at it every year, I mean, their revenues are not much different than their expenditures. I mean, it's not like they're stockpiling money away. So you talked about the football revenues. Where that money's going to go? It's going to go to House versus settlement. I mean, that's what are we saying? 21 million. I think that's the figure everyone's landed on.
Yeah,
that's going to go to athletes, and so you knew that as the TV revenue continues to increase, the natural assumption is like, hey, they're going to be flush with all this money. This new money is TV money. It's like, well, not really, because the world has changed, and now you're going to be able to pay athletes, and so that's where that money is going to go.
So 12 athletic departments have total debt exceeding $90 million. So 12 of 18, that's 2/3, right, Burnsy?
That's a good Edina math for you.
Thank you. So 2/3 of the conference have debt more than $90 million. Now, a lot of that, some of them are facilities or upgrades.
Debt service facilities.
Things that have been in for a long time. Buyouts, like we mentioned, that was part of Ohio State's. I think that was part of Michigan State's. I don't know if that counts what they may or may not have to do with Mel Tucker's contract, remember, because they were trying to get out of that. Northwestern is in litigation with Pat Fitzgerald. He's due like $40 million if he ends up kicking it. So 6 of them, that's 1/3, Ryan, are north of $225 million in debt. Like $225 million in debt, 6 of them. Illinois, who you're competing against directly, right? That's a school that most people think, well, Minnesota should be in the Illinois wheelhouse, right? Even though they've got, again, like every school, more tradition, more access to players, the whole bit. 312, Ohio State 286, Michigan, who prints money, is in debt $252 million, or has debt that they're working on. Penn State, again, prints money, 246. Washington 244, Iowa 227. That's crazy. Because I just think about the teeth gnashing when it was the last $60 million for Athletes Village that they needed to raise. Or maybe it was 30. I can't even remember. I could go back and look. But people are like, oh, man, they're not going to get the money. Like, they're going to have to borrow it. They're going to have to borrow $30 million. Like, who cares? Or 60. You look at what these other schools are doing. It's wild. UCLA claims no athletic debt, which is interesting because they've been operating at a loss for like 6 or 7 years. That's part of the reason why they're in the Big Ten. UCLA received $30 million in direct institutional support, picked up another $1.5 million in student fees. Maryland, $12 million in student fees, $6.1 million direct support from the school. And then there's Rutgers. Smoke them if you got them. Charts as athletic debt at $51.4 million. They received more than $21 million in student fees and direct institutional support. So why can they hire Kirk Shiraka and try to hire Corey Heatherman? Because money don't matter in Piscataway. I've had to do this before. Hey, this credit card's about to be maxed out. Maybe we should see if they can up the limit a little bit. Coming out of the pandemic, Rutgers just says, sure, yeah. History of paying the minimal fees, you're overstretched, no problem. We're happy to extend another, $5, $10, $15 million, whatever you need.
It's just it just gives you the perspective of how different it is from Rutgers to UCLA, which again, Dr. Min talks about within that article. They spent more than 51 million than they had this year. 50, Chip, what is your boy Martin Jarman doing out there?
Well, that's why when I hear Mick Cronin complaining about the travel in the Big Ten, I'm sure the AD's over there like, shh, we need the money. Yeah, he's like, we're not going to turn down the money. It's you see these numbers, and you can't help but shake your head and just think, where's this going and how's it going to end? Like, is this just going to continue to add up the debt total? Like, how do you get out from under and be profitable? And it's. I've always said major college sports is a giant game of chase, and this giant game of chase has led everyone to forget about finances because it's just. I got to keep up with them. And then the next coach comes in. This program has this. Okay, we got to go pay for that. So it's this endless game of chase where you're always chasing competitors. You're chasing rivals. You're chasing the next someone else in your conference. And before you know it, you have all this debt, and yes, the TV money is continues to increase, and I always wonder if there's a ceiling on that. Is there the bubble going to burst on that? Maybe not with streaming. I don't, that's for
Right.
smarter people than me, but everything keeps going up, 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 up. Right now, you're going to have to pay players. I just wonder 10 years from now, what will this look like? This enterprise?
I don't think we'll know.
It
It's
is interesting.
wild.
Just how you can have places like Rutgers take from the budget. You have places like UCLA with a $50+ million deficit in one fiscal year, and then you have Minnesota where I think Coyle spent like $1.5 million more. I think it was like $1.5 million deficit for fiscal year 24. But it's going to be interesting to see what everybody prioritizes, because I even think about Minnesota here, and that's where they got the new gymnastics facility going in for all the. I mean, they have put a lot of money into non-revenue sports like gymnastics, track and field got new buildings with the Village, golf got a new building, tennis and hockey, and then we have the overarching gigantic expense coming, which is the barn, and it's going to be. I think we talked about it last episode. It's going to be very expensive, $75+ million to either renovate it or build something new.
As we said then, it's going to be more than that. I mean, I think it's going to be at least twice that.
So there's gigantic expenditures coming as you finally are able to hopefully pay off Athletes Village here coming up very soon. But the way that it's going to be balanced is going to be fascinating to watch, because obviously football is the golden goose for any university. And that's where football generated $90 million at the University of Minnesota of their $150 million budget. That's 60% for those of you like Justin Gaard who can't do that.
Thank you.
Do the math there.
Thank you.
But you always have to find ways to, again, I understand that you have to earmark money for the house settlement. You have to earmark money for Williams Arena, the Athletes Village debt. But it's trying to figure out a way to balance it all, plus keep football profitable for fans with putting out a good product on the field, which PJ Fleck has done. It's going to be, again, I don't want to be Mark Coyle for that aspect, because I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you satisfy everybody.
You don't.
But it is. But, go ahead.
I was the idea of cutting sports, not just here, but that's a talker in college, at every, across college sports, because of this house settlement. You can't cut your way to $21 million. That's not going to be the answer. I mean, some of these non-revs that people talk about, okay, that's $1 million and a half their budget. You just can't cut your way to $21 million. You're going to have to find it elsewhere. And nobody wants to do that, right? You want to have a broad-based, yes, football's your priority. That's where you have to make your most money. That's where you have to really lean into and be great at and make sure you're giving them every opportunity to succeed. But you're going to have to be creative, and I think creative in ways that's not just, okay, well, let's just eliminate this sport. That's going to, help. That's not the answer.
Burnsy, you mentioned, not so subtly, another buyout possibly right down the street. So you're talking about Ben Johnson, the basketball coach.
Yep.
It's interesting that, because when we talked about the house settlement stuff with Coyle, one of the pregame shows, he talked about schools are going to, he said, I don't think you're going to see a lot of these crazy buyouts anymore. Like the Gus Malzahns or the Jimbo Fishers. And some schools are always going to be crazy, but most schools, are they going to be willing to stomach buyouts given that the finances, like you said, 15 million, let's just say it's 15 million to make it round.
Sure.
15 million, well, 20 million, because they're going to spend to the limit. So $20 million of your budget is going right back to the players. Like, you don't even see that money. It comes in, and I don't know if they have a mailbox that all the players go get to pick it up or if they direct deposit it. But he talked about, like, you really have to be committed to, we have to make a change. And I'm not just saying at men's basketball, but if you want to specify it to that, his buyout's $3 million, 2.9, something like that. You're probably going to have to pay the next coach at least $2.9 million. Ben is the lowest paid, second to lowest Big Ten paid coach, right, that we know about. I think Ohio State's guy, the kid Diebler, is $3 million, makes about,
Doesn't Ben make $2 million?
Yes. So that's
the lowest, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And lowest that we know about, we assume USC and Northwestern, Eric Musselman and Chris Collins, who's been there forever, they're making more than $2 million, correct?
I think so.
So he's 18 there. So you always talk about getting competitive. Well, what's middle of the pack in the Big Ten right now? Probably 4 or 5 million at least. So before you even bounce a basketball next year, you're at 3. You're probably at 7 or 8 plus.
You have a lot more
plus
faith
staffs.
than I do that whoever the next, if it does happen, and whoever the next men's basketball coach is, will be making more than, I will say, 2.5.
Well,
I have no faith.
But who are you getting then? Because
then you're doing the same thing. We're going to be in the same spot.
That's kind of my point in this whole thing. And so, and we can talk about it. So, because people ask me all the time, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? I don't know what Mark Coyle's thinking when it comes to Ben Johnson. I know what I'm thinking when it comes to Ben Johnson. It's probably very different than a lot of people on your message boards, because in my opinion, and not to switch it to this, but in my opinion, Ben was doing the job he was hired to do, and then the job changed on him, and they, like, in a minute, like I'm watching the other night, Pharrell Payne's starting on a top 15 team. Elijah Hawkins is starting on a top 15 team. On one Saturday, I had to watch those games back to back, and Elijah Hawkins told him he was coming back twice. And Cam Christie's playing for the San Diego Clippers. I think more people were at Edina Minnetonka when I went up to the community center 2 weeks ago. Like, that was supposed to be his team this year, and he didn't have it. So my perspective is different. It always has been. We've talked about Patino over the years, Burnsy. Like, I'm much more patient, I think, than most people. But I also look at the money and go, all right, in these times when people are already strapped, are you going, yeah, we're going to bang a $3 million buyout? You have to pay any coach that's going to come here. Number one is going to want to know what your NIL commitment is as an institution. They're going to be fighting for every single dollar, which, as we know, it was slower than most to get football going, which makes sense. That's the best. That's what you should do. You're probably like $7, $8, $9 million in before you even bounce a basketball this summer. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I think in general, institutions are really going to have to think about that, the buyout money stuff, or you're going to be just borrowing from the schools, like all these, unless you have a school that doesn't mind just giving you loans year after year after year after year.
It's an interesting conundrum. And again, I tend to be more towards you, where I don't know that there is a right answer to how to fix Gopher men's basketball, because it is, again, it was a money issue back in the spring, and it is kind of what it is. And whoever the next guy would be, again, I have no faith that they would be making anything more than 17th in the Big Ten money. Plus, what is your allotment going to be from the house settlement? And what steam is there for NIL in terms of, there's a lot of apathy, in my opinion, around the Gopher men's basketball program right now, which kind of just is what it is. I don't know what the right answer is. And again, I don't disagree that Ben was put in a spot that is not really his fault because of the money situation with the players, but it just is something to where if you're going to keep him around, you can't expect to see the bottom line on the budget in terms of ticket sales and everything like that going to be in an upward trajectory quite at all. I mean, especially with losing Dawson.
For sure. For sure. Yeah. Now, what I would say, though, is like, if for people that want that move to be made, as I think, Chip, you hinted at too, if you think you're going to make that move and then limp in again at 2.5 with somebody, like, good luck. Like, good luck. That to me is the definition of insanity. Like, I get it. If just hypothetically, like, even when they let Richard go, hey, we're going to go get somebody and we're going to pay him $5 million. Yeah. Like, you could have done that, right? They could have done that. Mm-hmm. But so that's where I'm always like, and 4 years is also quick. He gave Lindsey 5. Like, I mean, I would give him a shot with the rev share and see if you can figure some stuff out. That's me personally. But if you think, for people that think like, well, we'll just go hire X, Y, Z. If you're not going to invest, I'm kind of like you for the assistant pool, Burnsy. Sure. This is kind of my thing. Like, if you're not going to invest at this level, then what are you then that you finance your expectations. You really do. And it doesn't guarantee anything, but I don't know what good that would do you to say, 2.5 is going to be our max. And that's just a number you're making up. That's not anything that's like obviously hard reported. But I remember talking to a regent 4 or 5 years ago, said, what would you think of paying the basketball coach $3 million? And this person said, I just don't see it. I just don't see it at this point. And I said, okay, well, that's going to limit who's coming in. And I don't confuse it. Like, I would run it back year 5 revenue share, because just from conversations I've had, just in the world of basketball. Like you can the number they're going to have is going to be a good competitive number, and I think that is going to help. But that would be me. So anyway.
It was interesting. I can't remember if it was after the Whalen firing or Patino, but we had the press conference, and I asked Cole, I was like, why can't these basketball programs succeed? And this is not like a 4-year thing. This is a, we can go back. And Mark said, I've thought about that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
We could probably talk for 5 hours on this thing about men's basketball particularly. And,
I could.
And just go through it all. I don't think our listeners would want that, but.
Well, they wouldn't like my answers. They don't like my answers, but I've lived it. You see the play hard thing right here. This is me.
Right.
All right. This is Clem Haskins basketball camp. Like
from how many years ago? That's it. That was my whole point. Is like we're talking about Clem and the good old days for how many years ago? It's like
we need to let that go.
How many coaches and how many coaches and how many So, but we had that conversation about football for a while, right? Like what? Yep. Glenn Mason wasn't a bad coach. He was a good coach, right?
Absolutely.
Jerry Kill was a good coach.
Yep.
PJ Fleck's a good coach. I always come back to commitment, man.
Yep.
Commitment. That's you look at schools that are committed to something, and that's the starting point. That's the foundation for me. So now, what that looks like, again, we could talk about that for the next 5 hours, but there's symptoms to things, but I always come back to commitment, and I think, I know, and we could, not in every area, but they are committed to football. Now we can talk about assistant salary pool, and I know that's Burnsy's thing, but the commitment to football now is a hell of a lot different than the commitment to football than when I was a beat writer on it.
Totally.
I can just tell you that.
And guess what? They have a really good, solid program. They have the program's on a good, rock solid foundation. They've had some really good years. They've had some really good wins. They're putting guys in the NFL. They're putting coaches in the NFL. Their coaches are getting poached by power programs and the like. Yeah, you get what you emphasize, for sure. You absolutely get what you emphasize. Apropos of nothing, in terms of how difficult the Minnesota basketball job is, you guys can comment on this.
See, you open a can of worms. Burnsy's or Gaardsy's ready.
No, this is my assistant salary pool.
I know it is.
Yeah, I know.
Apropos of nothing, I just happened to look at the Mountain West standings here, and the defending champs in the Mountain West, the New Mexico Lobos, are 20-4 this year, and 12-1 in the Mountain West. They've won 6 games in a row, very safely in the NCAA tournament field, and as far as I know, have no Minnesotans on the roster. So I didn't know that was possible, but as far as I know, it seems like the Lobos are going to back-to-back tournaments. So it seems like might be a hard place to win. So maybe we give some people a chance and a little bit of a break, and that includes the current head coach. That's just me.
I would love to buy Gaardsy an IPA and just say go for basketball.
You don't even have to.
Let it rip, buddy.
Go for basketball is my IPA.
Is there anything in this? Is there anything you love more than go for basketball that tugs at your heartstring more? Maybe
your wife and children. I'll answer that for you.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think I have. Speaking of Musselman, I think I have a picture of me waiting for Bill Musselman's autograph down here as a 7-year-old. I will say I do take Gopher basketball the most personally. If you want to know what I'm like, Wolves, of course, I was 7 when they came. It's awesome.
Yeah.
But I'm the last generation that can talk to the old people at Williams Arena about what it used to be like. I'm 42 years old. People that than me, when the old people start talking, they gravitate to me because I'm the only one that remembers it. I'm the only one that was there for part of that. So I do take.
You're the last barn baby. You're the last barn baby.
You're right. We got a Halloween baby. We got a barn baby on this podcast. But I remember it. But I also know that we got to stop obsessing over it because those days are gone. Like those days are just gone. It's got to be done a different way. It just does. And so, but I do take it the most personally. Like if you're asking me who am I the biggest homer for? It's absolutely Gopher basketball. Absolutely. And I make no apologies for it. I just don't. I feel like I know college basketball pretty well.
Yeah.
Just from
and
going to Final Fours and meeting the coaches and I feel like I've taken the time to learn how the whole thing works.
Yeah.
And it's a really bleeping hard place to win. It just is. It always has been. Even in the glory days. Yeah, we got to cut this off because I could go.
He's getting worse.
Well, I could take an hour of your time. I mean, I would ask anybody to just Wikipedia Gopher men's basketball and look at the NCAA tournaments that they have and have not had, because we remember, like, man, when Musselman was here, we had the fun warm up. And it was NCAAs, and it was like, yeah, it was a couple times, and the school got put on probation. Okay, when Dutch was here, when Clem was here, like, how many people are obsessed with Brian Dutcher? Good God. Like, because Jim was the coach and did games on MSC.
A couple local media members that will be at his funeral.
We get it. And they're 78 years old. It's like, let's get Brian Dutcher here. Brian Dutcher, I think, lives on the beach in San Diego and is the #1 show in town. He's not coming to Minnesota. He's just not. Sorry. And it's not 1987. I remember watching Jim Dutcher on MSC. I think I have the video. Yeah, here it is. Look at this. This is who you're talking to right here. Look at this VHS on YouTube. 1997 Final Four.
He has it right next to it.
Yeah,
you just have to bend down and get it.
It's in here in this drawer. This is autographed
Bobby
Jackson.
As soon as we finish this, he's putting that thing in. He's
number 24.
VCR.
Here, I'm going to scroll up. You see my Final Four basketball? Also signed by Bobby Jackson. So I didn't mean to hijack this thing, but it's like I should be the authority on this, and it's just that's why I defended Pitino. That's why I've now Tubby I was too hard on. I will say that Tubby, I think I got Norwood teagued a little bit. And because in hindsight, Tubby did a good job here, right? Mm-hmm. It's a really hard place to win. So I'm for giving people chances and understanding it's a hard place to win. It's going to take something different and unique to make it that way. But if you're not going to go pay a coach $6 million, what's the alternative? Doing it the way Ben was doing it and lost 3 players that he wasn't expecting to lose. Anything else you guys want to add on that?
I think we're going to have a lot of fodder here in the next couple of weeks, Chipper.
Will this episode get posted on GopherIllustrated.com? Because I'm sure your audience is going to have some thoughts on everything.
Yeah, we'll get it up there just for you.
He reached down and pulled up his video.
I forgot.
Chip can't believe you pulled a VHS tape.
Well, I have the tape. I don't have any way to play it.
I was about to say, you got to convert VHS.
He just looks at the cover. He just tears are in his eyes. He just looks at.
Look, here's the ticket. I didn't even know I had this from the '97 Final Four. I didn't even know this was in there.
Gotta frame that, baby.
I'm like Danny Collins.
That's probably worth something somewhere.
Wow, these are in really good shape too. Here's the
Are they laminated?
No, here's the championship game. It's that was Kentucky and Arizona overtime victory. Mike Bibby, Miles Simon. Jason Terry was the 6th man.
Yeah.
Rick Pitino was the coach. So, yeah, I feel like I'm the authority on Gopher basketball, and I make no apologies for it. I care the most about that as anybody. So, but it bothers me when people go, well, just, we're going to fire the coach. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. It's like, okay, it ain't that easy. And the old coach, who everybody hated because he wasn't good, recruiting Minnesota kids, is 21 and bleeping 4. About to go to his second, like, if they fired Ben Johnson and no one knew Richard Pitino, they'd go, the New Mexico coach would be a good fit here. He's won back-to-back Mountain West titles, but because we are who we are, it is what it is. So go Ben Johnson. If I win the Mega Millions, I'm donating it to Dinkytown athletes. I'm giving Ben the money. I'm letting him keep the players. When the payrolls are equal, Ben does a good job. When he's got to play a 6'8" freshman who's probably making $500,000 for Illinois that's coming off the bench, it's going to be a little tricky. When Brad Underwood can just sit there on the stool like this and go, good shot, bud. Like, that's tough. So anyway.
You just had to put a quarter in him, Chipper.
How did we
start? I have no idea how this even started, but it was great. It was great.
I'm going to have to go back and listen.
The passion in your voice is unmatched.
I love it. That's what we want. Gaardsy.
Well, I love Gopher fans.
I love your passion, man.
People piss me off, man. It's a tough place to win. And he was on his way to winning and lost a couple guys. Anyway.
I knew what was going to happen when you put the quarter in. I just didn't know it would last this long.
I got to see what else is in this drawer. What other
vintage knickknacks do you have?
What other artifacts?
He has his shorts from the Clem camp in there. He's got his
the Play Hard shorts.
The Play Hard shorts.
I can't believe I have tickets to those tickets
signed by Dave Thorson. Those shorts.
I'm going to bring them to Thorson and get them signed. Yeah. What else do I have? Yeah, it's not important. All right. Anything else we want to talk about? Max Brosmer's going to the combine. That's good. That's exciting. Good for Max. he's
Good
going to
for
talk
Max.
his way into an NFL roster, guys.
He should be a 7th round draft pick somewhere. Like
Yeah,
he should be someone that is in the NFL for a handful of years. And if he gets a shot, we'll see what happens. But to me, with how smart that kid is, he's an easy 7th round draft pick.
Yeah, there's no doubt in my mind he's going to be on a practice squad next year for sure.
And where was he? The Shrine game, Burnsy?
Shrine Bowl, yep.
I mean, every time I looked on Twitter, and it's probably just the algorithm because they know I like Max Brosmer. It's like random scouts were just like, another dime from Max Brosmer. Look at the processing for Max. It was just Max Brosmer nonstop while he was at those practices and the games. I mean, he's a stud. Yeah. He's a stud. We know, and that's why they, had a great passing offense this year for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So good for him.
Well,
that'll be cool.
If you're accurate and you can process,
you're going to have a place in the NFL.
That's right.
All
right. I'm going to go take a shower. My second one of the day.
Hold up that VHS tape one more time.
One more time?
Yep.
Yeah. One more time.
You had it, to Chip's point, that thing was ready. Unironically ready.
And look at this, MSC, Midwest Sports Channel. Jim Dutcher used to be on the games. Jim Dutcher and Dick Bremer. Dick Bremer narrates this thing. It starts off, if these walls could talk, imagine the stories they'd tell. Look at this. This is my 8th grade year.
Goodness.
This is how long it's been, guys. 8th grade, and this year didn't count. I just want you all to remember that. This year, the greatest year in Gopher basketball history, it no longer counts. My 10-year-old son asks me where the banner is every time we go there. I say, I don't know, son. I have no idea where it is.
Storage closet.
But, yeah.
They can't take it from your heart, though, clearly. They can't take it from your heart.
I'm just taking a look here. So Bobby Jackson was from North Carolina. John Thomas, Minneapolis Roosevelt, Park of Cottage Grove.
You just had to get him going, Chip.
Trevor Winter.
All because you didn't post it on your message board.
Trevor Winter, Slayton, Minnesota. His kid plays for Wisconsin. Thanks a lot, Trev. And Eric Harris from New York, the point guard from New York, where if he doesn't hurt his shoulder in the Sweet 16 game against Clemson, they probably win the national championship, and then that would have been vacated. So, wow, there you go. That is hilarious that this was right here. But I think it proves my point, all right?
Yeah.
That I love this program. I'm a homer about this program, and if that makes me an outlier, I'll take it. And I would still tear down Williams Arena, despite all that. But anyway.
There's going to be a lot of people with some thoughts and feelings for you on the Ben Johnson, and then that final statement of you want to tear down the barn.
I'm open for renovation ideas, but I want it to be the best fan experience that it can possibly be. Whatever product is on the court, take the team out of it.
Mm-hmm.
I want the best fan experience you can possibly get. If that's renovate Williams Arena, I'm all for it. It's a special building to people 42 years old and older, right? If you need to build a new one, build a new one. But I'll be there for it. I'll be there for it. Do we need like a month off after this podcast? What do we think?
Oh my God. I love this.
What's coming up at
we'll talk about football next one.
Yeah, we got a lot of football. What's coming up at GopherIllustrated.com, Burnsy? What can we help promote here on the Pair and a Spare podcast?
Why does Justin Gaard want to tear down the barn, and why does Justin Gaard just think that we should get rid of history? It's going to be a Ryan James article coming out here pretty quick, because he will fight you. Ryan James will go down. If they bring a bulldozer, he's going to chain himself to that.
Yeah, he would.
He's got all the memorabilia like you do.
You're right.
Yeah, I don't have quite the projects that Chip does. Chip, what do you got? What do you want to?
Couple projects.
For a peek behind your curtain before you head off to the Italian grape.
Yeah, a couple projects coming up in early March, and we'll talk about when it comes out, maybe possibly. So
hold on, I'm just going to have another cup of coffee in my 1997 Minnesota Final Four mug. Hold on. It's got to have that's good coffee.
He's got the jammies. He's got the sheets.
97 Final Four. You think I'm not invested in Gopher hoops? You wonder why I take it so personally? So anyway, is today Tuesday? I'm going to go win the Mega Millions, and don't tell my wife, because I'm giving it all to Ben Johnson, and we're going to get this thing turned around.
And then you're going to eat every meal at Jack's Cafe.
I'm going to go to Jack's Cafe. I'm going to say, Bill, I'd like the whole menu. And send some creme brulee. Go deliver it to Chip Scoggins.
To me.
Get Burnsy the steak because he loves that. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to have a permanent table by that bubbling brook in the back. We're right around the corner from brunch season outside, from the patio being open. The days are getting longer. The sun is everywhere. And Jack's Cafe is the best place to do it. So, and I can maybe go get a drink there right now, because it kind of feels like I need one.
And we're going to have something at Jack's coming up, we think. We're pretty sure. Some kind of special evening
After you get back from Italy, right?
after I get back from Italy, but I'm issuing a challenge or maybe a warning.
A warning.
I want you to come up and ask Gaardsy about Gopher basketball while we're there.
Oh God.
I got to see what else I have in this room. I do have,
but I want everybody to join us when we do have something. I want that place to be filled. I want people to join us. Come hang out with us. Have a beer with us.
This is the other trinket I'll show you guys real quick. This is Ryan. This is called a phone card.
What is a phone card?
And you used to have use pay phones, but
Yeah.
this was 10 free minutes on a pay phone where you could call somebody. You had to use this number on the back of it. Chip knows what I'm talking about.
Yes, sir.
And they had these in the Final Four seat cushions, which I don't know where that is. My dad must have those somewhere. But yeah, my Uncle Rich and I just went like seat to seat looking for more phone cards. So I've got like
awesome.
10 to 20 of these in 1997. It's probably an impermissible benefit back then for the Final Four kids. Courtney
Yeah.
James was probably calling his tutor with these phone cards. That's why we got in trouble. So, hold on. Hang on. I'm just going to put on my 1997 Final Four hat. I'll wear that this morning. Oh, I might actually wear my 1997 Big Ten champions hat autographed by the whole team. I got a lot of options. So yeah, don't come at me with your thoughts on Gopher basketball because nobody's been at it as long as I have. All right, we good? Good show.
Good. Yeah.
Goodness.
All right. Hope everybody hung with this. Hope I'm sure people probably clicked off. Please leave your comments on the YouTube page and also on GopherIllustrated.com. Let me know what you think about our last 25 minutes of conversation on this football podcast, The Pair and a Spare. Thanks to Chip Scoggins. Thanks to Ryan Burns. Thanks, as always, to Jack's Cafe. Make your reservations at jackscafe.com, and we'll talk to you. I don't know. I might get fired from this podcast next time on what is this? The Pair and a Spare podcast.